Like, hello my lovely people, my name is Michaela. Welcome back to my YouTube channel where we talk about all things books. I actually can't believe we're in March already and we're doing my February reading wrap up. I literally feel like it was yesterday when I did my January reading wrap up. We've got quite a lot of books to talk about, so I'm just going to get straight into it, but just know I read my favourite book of the year so far in February, so let's get into it. I'm just going to slide over here, and the first thing we're going to talk about is my February reading stats. If you're not interested in my stats and you're just here for the reviews, I'll put timestamps down below. Feel free to skip. I just love a good stat. I read 12 books in February, which is a total of 3,975 pages. 11 of those books were between 300 and 499 pages. One was less than 300, and they were all fiction books. And the way I read these, I read 9 on my Kindle, I read 2 on audio, and I read 1 physical. I think this is actually the first physical book that I've read this year. And then when we look at my genre breakdown, I was shooketh. Normally, thriller and mystery is like at the top by a mile. Fantasy is tied in there. Like, what? I don't know how accurate Storygraph actually categorises these, as one I read was technically a cozy mystery, but because it was paranormal, I think is being categorised as fantasy. So I don't know how accurate it is, but I was not expecting to see fantasy up there. That was a plot twist. And then my average rating for the month was 3.04, which is not good. That's quite low. I only had 1 5-star, which is my favourite book of the year so far. So like that just made the month amazing anyway. But yeah, 3.04, it's not great, is it? We're going to aim for higher in March. Okay, that's the stats out the way. Now let's get into the actual book reviews. And the way I'm going to review them is the order I read them in, because I just feel like you might feel my pain on the month that I had, because the beginning wasn't great, but it gets better. Just stick with me, guys. The first book I read this month was Elly Griffiths' The Frozen People, and I was so excited to read this book because I'd never heard a book with this premise. And I am in my historical fiction era, and this is a historical fiction thriller with a bit of magical realism. And like, I just thought that sounds so up my street, and I was so excited to read it. We follow a police detective who's called Elly, and she works on cases that are so cold that they're basically frozen. Cases from our history that have just never been able to be solved. But the way that her and her team solve these cases is that they can time travel. I love a thriller book that does something different, and I feel like this did exactly that. And we get like dual timelines in this. We get them in our present timeline, and then they also go back to the Victorian era to try and solve a case from back then. I thought the book was so well done. I did have a couple of issues with it, of things that I personally would have liked to see in a bit different. I read this in a reading vlog, so I'll link that up above and in the description if you want to go watch it and get like more in-depth thoughts. But overall, I did have a really good time reading it. This is going to be part of a series as well, so I will definitely be carrying on with the series. I did end up giving it 3.5 stars, and that's linked to what I said, where there are a few things that I would have changed. And also, I did find myself getting a bit confused at times because we were following dual timelines. There was like different characters in each one. I feel like I needed a character list. But overall, it was a really good book, and I would still recommend you read it if this sounds like your thing. I then read The 3 Lies of Cate by Cate Fagan. I've just realised she's named the book like the same name. The character's got the same name as her. And the reason I picked up this book was it was being pitched for fans of Taylor Jenkins Reid and also lesbians. So, I mean, 2 of my favourite things. But I feel like if a book is comparing itself to Taylor Jenkins Reid and for fans of Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, that's a bold claim. Like, you've got a lot to live up to. And in this book, we're following an author who was always written under a pseudonym. Like, nobody's ever really known who she is. But now there's a memoir coming out about her, told by the people closest to her in her life. And we're not going to waste too much time on it, to be honest, guys, because quite frankly, I thought this book was terrible. Its first problem was comparing itself to Taylor Jenkins Reid. Like, going into that, I think my expectations were like automatically peaked. I was bored. I probably should have DNF'd it. I think, yeah, I definitely should. I gave this book 2 stars. I really didn't enjoy it, and we're not going to talk about it anymore. The next book I read was Delicate Condition by Danielle Valentine. We read this for mine and my friends' in-person book club. If you're not part of a book club, this is your sign to join one. It is the best time. In Delicate Condition, we meet a woman called Anna. Anna is an actress and she is struggling to get pregnant. She's doing really well in her career, but her and her husband are going through IVF because they just really want a baby. When she does finally get pregnant, weird things start happening. Somebody is breaking into her house, stealing her ultrasound photo, they're messing with her medicines, and then the doctors tell her that she's lost the baby. So it's a heavy book. She is adamant that she hasn't lost the baby and is convinced that the baby inside her is a monster. I was so excited to read this because I knew that the new American Horror Story season was based on this book. So I had super high expectations going into it. It's been on my radar for such a long time. And I didn't hate it. I ended up giving it 3 stars. But the ending is what made the book for me. I thought the ending was absolutely incredible. It was just the 300 pages before that I didn't like. And I think most people at book club felt exactly the same. It wasn't a very popular book among us all. I think most people did rate it between I think most people rated it 3 stars, to be honest. So yeah, I was a bit sad, but I'm conflicted because I thought the ending made the other pages worthwhile, if that makes any sense at all. The next book I read was Bookshops and Bonedust by Travis Baldree, which is the prequel to Legends and Lattes. I read Legends and Lattes last year, I think it was, and I absolutely loved it. It's a cozy fantasy series. So basically in this book, we meet our main character, Viv, who we see what she was doing before she ended up in Legends and Lattes. And I just don't think I'm a fan of prequels. I actually did this on audio, which I think if I was reading it physically, I don't think I would have continued with it, but I did it on audio. And yeah, I just don't think I'm a fan of prequels. I want a sequel. The reason I'm personally not a fan of fantasy, but I like cozy fantasy, is because I don't like reading about war. And let's be real, that's what fantasy mainly is. And Viv, our main character, used to be some form of fighter. She's an oak or something along those lines. She looks like this. So she's some form of fighter. And so we're finding out about a fighting journey and when she was injured, and I'm just not interested in that. I want the cozy vibes, and I gave it 2 stars. And this is such a negative start to the video, but the reason I've done it this way is because I wanted you to feel the start of the month I had. I finished this book on February the 12th. So these 4 books took a quarter of my month, and I didn't like any of them. I had a terrible start, but have no fear, from here it's going to get more positive, I promise. How I didn't end up in a slump, I have no idea, to be perfectly honest with you. I battled my way through a third of this month. The Crescent Tearoom by Stacy Sivinski is a cozy fantasy which follows a group of 3 sisters who own a tea shop, and they predict people's futures by reading their tea leaves. But the Council of Witches turn up one day and they're just not happy with them, and the 3 sisters start going in their own direction. So we're basically following these 3 sisters as they're kind of finding themselves. And I would say, if you're a fan of beautiful, whimsical writing, if you like Caraval, I really, really think you'd like this. If you like the Caraval series, I think you would adore it. I buddy read this with my friend Kel, and she actually went and read the Caraval series straight after, and she agreed with me. So I love following books about sisters who are really close, and I don't know, it just gives me all the feels. This was a real cozy fantasy and I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I don't think this book is getting the love it deserves. So yeah, like I said, if you like witchy, whimsical, Caraval-esque books, pick this up. Homicide at the Haunted House by Beth Dolgner. If you watched my cozy mystery reading vlog, you might think, why are you holding that book in your hands, Michaela? You said you wasn't going to buy yourself a trophy copy unless it was a 5 stars. And I couldn't stop thinking about this book. I had to get myself a trophy copy. I read it on Kindle Unlimited. Oh my God, I love this book. And my train of thought was, there's 9 books in the series. I'm not going to buy all 9, but I've got the first one. So whenever I talk about the book, I can hold this up because I need you all to stop what you're doing and go and download this book immediately. Olivia, our main character, is driving to go and stay with her brother for a while. She's just going through a divorce. She's lost everything. And she's driving and her car breaks down in the middle of nowhere. She goes to the garage to get her car fixed and they say like it's going to be a couple of days, like we're in the middle of nowhere, we need to order some parts. And the town that she's broken down in is called Nightmare. We're moving, let's go. She hasn't got a lot of money. She's now having to pay for a motel while her car's being repaired and she's got to pay for her car. So she's like, I need to get a job. And the town has a haunted house. Like, do you know those like haunted houses where like scare actors like chase you? So she's like, I'm just going to see if I can get a job for a couple of days. And then on the first day of her job, a dead body gets left outside the haunted house. And this was just, it's less than 200 pages. I read it so quickly. I just can't explain how much of a good time I had reading this book. It really is a cozy mystery with like found family. Like, it just brought me so much joy. I've actually started reading the second book already. I'm halfway through it and I'm still having such a good time. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars when I read it initially, but like that's not fair. We're going up to a 4.5 because yeah, do you know when like a book just leaves like a mark on you and you can't stop thinking about it? Yeah. We're going from a positive straight back into a negative because guys, it's rant time. I was sold a dream. I was lied to. I was literally outright lied to. The Baby Dragon Cafe, where are the baby dragons, please? I went into this thinking we were following a woman who lives in a town where like everyone has dragons and the baby dragons always cause trouble because like they're still being trained, so they set fire to things and they're not really welcome anywhere. So our main characters opens a cafe for the baby dragons to come to and like they're welcome. Don't get me wrong, the book does start out like that, but then within like 20 pages she's met a boy and he needs help training his dragon. So we leave the coffee shop and basically we don't return. The book should be called How to Train Your Dragon, and the main character is just a wet sap. Like the guy has got like a bit of trauma and like if he's not giving her attention she's literally whining and being like, why does he hate me? And like she's known him 6 hours. This was the most insufferable book I've ever read. I was actually hate reading this. I should have DNF'd it, but I was hate reading it. I was aware what I was doing. And then it took some like mad religious turn and it was like a sin that they weren't married. And I was like, no, surely not. We're not going there. Also, like, I feel like the dragons, like, they could have been, you could have just told me it was a cat and I would have believed you. Like, nothing about it, like, was, like, specifically dragons. Like, apart from, like, they, like, set fire to things occasionally. But, like, the dragons would, like, nibble on her. You know, like how puppies do. So I'm like, basically, you could just call it the puppy, How to Train Your Puppy. And I would have believed you. Like, the dragons just weren't a main part of it at all. If you didn't guess, I gave this book 1 star. Then the next book I read was another one that I read in the Cozy Mystery Reading Vlog, and that is 6 Feet Under by Sarah Fox. I was so excited to read this because, like, that literally looks like my cat. Like, literally looks like my cat. And his name is Binks. Like, the first word in this book is Binks. And I was like, no, stop. I'm gonna love this book. It follows a girl called Becca who used to live in Hollywood. However, she is now moved back to her hometown in Vermont, which, like, cars are not allowed there. Like, everybody gets about on gondolas. You know, like how in Venice they get around in gondolas. Everyone gets around like that here. And she also owns a chocolate shop. And I mean, stop, cute. But then one day somebody is found dead in like is it a canal? In the canal. And like, don't get me wrong, this wasn't a bad book. I just really struggled to like connect to the main character and the story. I just found myself like, I wasn't caring, if I'm honest with you. But I don't think, like, it didn't do anything wrong. I just really struggled to connect with it. So I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. But then everything was all right in the reading world of Michaela because we then read my favourite book of the year so far. A book that I did not expect to love as much as I did, and that is The Favourites by Layne Fargo. Oh my gosh, this story, I knew 10% into this that it was going to be a 5 stars. I went out and I bought myself a trophy copy when I was literally like maybe 10% into it. I just knew, I had that gut feeling. The book follows a girl called Katerina who her life goal is to be an Olympic ice dancer. That's all she wants. She will do anything, and I mean anything, to get there. She dances with her childhood lover, and like he doesn't want it as much as her, but like he's doing it for her. So this is pitched as a love story. However, like I think that doesn't do it a justice at all. It is so much more than that. The book is told in like the usual format, but it's also got like interview transcripts in there, and like you know that the book is leading up to something, because basically you're following these characters for a long period of their lives, and I love that. I love it where we get to see like a character, like the character development in this. The best way I can describe it is it was like watching reality TV. Like, it was like watching a reality Netflix TV show where the drama is unfolding. The pacing of this book was incredible. I think it's just over 400 pages. And whenever you would like start to feel like it was slowing down, something would happen and it would just pick back up and we were going again. I didn't want this book to end. This could have been another 200 pages longer and it still would have been a 5-star book. Like, this is now like I think one of my all-time favourites. If you are a fan of audiobooks, I would recommend the audio. It was a production, literally a production. I did like half and half, so I read half physically, I read half with the audio, and like sometimes I was reading and listening to the audio at the same time because I feel like you got like maximum effect that way. I feel like I know these characters in this book on a deep level. So if you haven't guessed already, it was a 5-star. A 6-star book, if you will. I very nearly DNF'd The Lamb by Lucy Rose. I was this close to DNFing it. I think I was on like page 160 and I was thinking I can't do it. I literally can't. But something I find when I'm struggling with a book is if I switch to audio, like sometimes it can like pull it back for me, and it definitely did. I need to tell you what the book's about. We follow a mother and daughter who live in the middle of nowhere in Cumbria, I think it is, and they are cannibals. The mum basically lures strays in, that's what she calls them, like when they get lost in the woods, and they eat them. And that's what the book is about. So Lucy Rose is a debut author, and I didn't know what the book was trying to do. I think that's what I struggled with the most. I didn't know what message the author was trying to get across with the book. And I seen a video from her explaining like the cannibalism is a metaphor for love. And I just didn't get that. I just didn't get that from it. And I think if you like weird girl fiction, you would probably like this. But I think that is something I struggle with, where there is like this message that the author is really trying to get across and it's just not landing for me. But I know that so many of you will love this book because so many of my friends have been loving it. Like, I'm not one to look for like plot holes in books. Like, I'm kind of just like a la 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 la, like, yeah, just tell me what you want and I'll believe you. But like, they were trying to make out that they lived in the middle of nowhere, but like the school bus like picked her up from outside her house. And I just think, so you're telling me all these people are going missing and they're eating them, but nobody's suspecting the house on its own? I don't know. Like, that was just like glaring at me. Like a red alarm was just going, meow, meow, meow. I did enjoy the audiobook though. I did. The audiobook narrator was really good. So I think if, maybe try the audiobook of this. But then again, if you like weird girl fiction, you'd probably love this as well. Basically, listen to nothing I say. I ended up giving this book 3 stars, which I think is quite like a turnaround, to be honest. And I did like the ending. So I didn't hate it. We read She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica for my online book club. If you want to join my online book club, the link is down below. It's completely free. Come on over. I'd love to have you. And we meet a woman called Megan who works as an intensive care nurse, where she's been an intensive care nurse for a long time. She's really good at her job and she doesn't get like too attached to the people that come in. But one day a woman is brought in who they think has jumped from a bridge and like she's barely alive. She's in a coma. But Megan gets a bit too attached to like the family and her patient and starts getting a bit too involved. When people start suspecting that she may not have been jumped, she could have actually been pushed. I loved this book. Like the twists and turns that this book took, oh my God, I literally didn't see any of them come in. Like, I could never have guessed. I thought it was incredible. I did think the ending was slightly rushed. That would be my only criticism. But I gave it 4.5 stars and I loved it. Looking at the book club ratings, some people have really liked it and some people have really not. So, yeah. But if you've got like similar taste to me, then I think you'd like let's give it a go. I've only ever read one book by Mary Kubica before. I think it was Local Woman Missing, and I didn't love that. But this is so good, so now I'm definitely going to check out more books by Mary Kubica. And the book I finished the month with was Shark Heart by Emily Habeck, and again, I am conflicted. This is set in a world where sometimes humans just turn into animals. So in this, we're following a man as he is navigating himself turning into a great white shark. So him and his wife are trying to deal with it, and it doesn't just happen overnight. It happens gradually. Like, he's starting to get like scales on his back. His nose is like, the cartilage is going. He's developing into a great white shark. Obviously, that's quite weird, but in the world that this book is set in, like, it's quite a normal thing. It does happen to humans, and they can turn into like dogs, reptiles. So, and just so happens he's turning into bloody Jaws. I loved the first 50% of this book. I was like so invested in the story, like really, really invested in it. And then something happens, can't say, spoiler, and then it takes a completely different turn. And like, I just wasn't interested in that second half. I wanted the first 50% to maybe be the book, to be perfectly honest with you. And then the ending, it comes back like to the beginning. So like that middle bit, the second half, I just really, really was not interested in. I was thinking like, how is this connected, I guess. So yeah, that's why I'm conflicted on it. So I ended up on like a 3-star rating because it's like, it's nearly down the middle, isn't it? I think if it was just the first half, it could have been like a 5-star book, to be perfectly honest with you. For such a weird premise, I found myself like, yeah, I loved it. The way the book is written as well is written in like kind of like really, really short chunks, and like it's told through like scenes where like it's like they're acting it out, and it was just a really unique way of writing it. Actually, it was quite lyrical, I guess, in places. The writing was beautiful. And that's all the books that I read in February. I feel like it's been a bit negative, but the ones that I did read that were good were really, really good. And at the end of the day, you can't win them all, can you? If you've read any of these books, I would love to know what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like if you did enjoy it. And I'll see you next time.